This is the Lesbian Historic Motif Podcast, brought to you by Heather Rose Jones. The show looks at lesbian and sapphic themes in history and literature, and historical fiction with queer female characters, including fantastic versions of the past. We present research, interviews, news of the field, book listings, and original historical fiction for your enjoyment. For even more historic research, check out our blog. Every time I encounter a new story by Jeannelle M. Ferreira, today's author, I'm impressed with the breadth of historic settings she can tackle. From the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars in her novel The Covert Captain, to Jewish communities in Russia in her previous story for us, Your Fingers Like Pen and Ink, to early 20th century New York in some of the stories in her collection The Fire and the Place in the Forest. Today's story takes us back to ancient Crete in the Minoan era, among bull leapers, brightly painted frescoes, and the ever-present threat of volcanoes. If you do an image search on Minoan, fresco, and saffron, you'll get some lovely visuals to keep in mind as you listen to The House of the Women. Jeannelle writes queer historic romance and poetry, and comes as something of a matched set with today's narrator, Violet Dixon, who has done several stories for us in the past, as well as narrating the two books of Jeannelle's mentioned previously. This recording is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International Public License. You may share it in the full original form, but you may not sell it, you may not transcribe it, and you may not adapt it.
The House of the Women by Jeannelle M. Ferreira, narrated by Violet Dixon. I'm sorry about your mother. Get out of my light. Isette lifted the hand she could. Bone black sifted from her fingertips. Her other hand held the linen sketch taut over plaster, and nothing could fall yet. Isette, it's hours past dark. There was only one lamp, and a ghost in its flicker. Isette more than half turned to glimpse her. Her weight was all in her shoulder, pinning the sketch, when Sira said Isette again, and the earth shook. The earth shook, and Isette, unbalanced, as if she were not island-born, with a cry and a dizzy dread for the landing. Her back went into her workbench, hard enough to shift the stone mortar and make the pestle roll. The cup full of bone black hit the floor. Her lump of blue frit rolled and shattered, breaking the dish with tomorrow's grind of red. She was not reddened herself, only stunned. A second tremor had gone before Isette blinked at the darkness. The last one, Geb and Poseidon tipping the cup out, before she thought to look for the light. Sira stepped over the mess, not a fleck or a shard against her bare feet, and scooped up the fallen lamp before Isette's luck slipped worse. She kept the flame close to her hollowed hand. She must have calluses yet, and lifted it safely far from her own skirts and the pigment powder blossoms on the floor. As if the light wasn't Isette's and paid for, Sira moved from wall to wall, from figure to figure there. So slowly her bracelets and anklets were silent. She finished the ones downstairs. Sira would not name the dead. But all these are you. All these are... Isette. She stopped and lifted her hand. There was lily red somehow on her fingernails. She would have touched. No harm to pigment and plaster. But the world was still wrong-ended, still shaking through Isette's palms and the soles of her feet, and it felt too intimate to allow. Well done, you, knowing a griffin from a monkey. Go to the crows. Sira came to stand over her, so the light spilling down on Isette was almost blinding, and the room around them was lost to the dark. She looked as if she'd cursed the mountain into shaking again. But when she did speak, it was as if it hurt to breathe. What happened? Color maker's cough? Breathe stone green or glass blue all your life, and it showed red in the end. Isette's own cough was hollow, but not every morning, not every night, as Nefret's had been too. Isette would not have chosen to meet again. Not like this, with lime-splashed cheeks, in an old bag tunic stained with ochre and bone char. She hadn't bought hot water in a week. Her hair was still shorn down for her mother, born in the Black Land, and Nefret, too young to give up her doll to the huntress or do any harm. Sierra had come over with the dawn boats, had no right not to reek of fish, and might have stepped down off the wall. Her coal and powder couldn't mask her pity. Not pity, thought Isette. She carried Nefret front, back, and sideways into the hills, and rolled down with her. She ate at Mother's hearth more nights than the sky has stars. Why have you come back? It was harsher than Isette meant, as if she'd forgotten how to talk to a person, a splinter of a question too sharp after so many years. I'm not a prisoner, Sierra stared. I came to count the harvest. Numbers still for a goddess? You could do that here for your sister. I didn't choose. Did you think My sister said this was your commission now. They'd never spoken to one another like this. So coldly, Isette thought she wouldn't see color by morning. If they had, better to forget. Sierra set down the lamp and offered her hand to Isette, never bending. They'd grown up together, tumbling, leaping, learning to get a body through space. Everyone on the island did. Isette was tired, childish, and in love to the ends of her eyelashes still. She reached, wrapped her hand above Sierra's elbow, and pulled. Soraya knew where she wasn't, not the temple, because silence was no real thing when supplicants, merchants, clergy, and clerks shared time and space. Not on a couple of goatskins at the back of Naria's warehouse. She didn't feel crowded in or smell unwashed wool. Her overskirt was rolled up for a pillow, and someone else's head held it down too. Her traveling cloak had come up under her chin, the clean salt scent of open water mixed, a little, with a hold full of squid. No one had shuttered the windows last night, and a cool wind rose off the bay. It must be almost cold outdoors. But Soraya was warm. Beside her on the floor of the empty building, Isette made a little cat gesture against the curve of Soraya's neck, and she knew where she was. All the memories she carried with her were of Isette in motion, in feeling, in flight. Her eyes and eyebrows smoke black, bitter black, her nose straight and sharp, and her cheeks struck with color from paint powder or a fight. Stillness made Isette almost unfamiliar. She looked a little softer, a little sad. Tiny traces of blue and white were on her cheeks and eyelids. A rosy mark, light as a sketch, lay over the fawn reddish skin of Isette's shoulder, and the linen there was notched a little. Soraya let her fingertips hover over Isette's mouth, the painting perfect curve of her lower lip. There were very few ways, over salt and under sky, to make Isette shut up. Soraya had never taken the chance to start from perfect quiet. She had time. Her time, here, wasn't woven through 100 others. The morning light was still pale at the window's edges. She was so spoiled from her time on the Big Island that she let herself picture a real bed and pillows to soften it. Heat crept across her face. She had to close her eyes, and noise rose from the street below. Lisette curled away from the sounds, away from her, and when she moved, she coughed hard. Her hands caught and scraped at the floorboards. She touched a bit of Soraya's bundled-up overskirt and sat up like the room's guardian griffin come to life. "Sira?" Carefully she offered her shoulder and waited for Lisette to rest there. "Breathe, Marit." She shook herself hard. "No, you shouldn't say those things." "Someone else should?" "No," Lisette said again. "But in my dream, we were in Kemet. I've never seen it. Don't know it from chalk on a wall. We were there because we couldn't be here, just nothing between Cassia and this side of the bay." She tried to run her hands through her hair. Her fingers splayed in the soft stubble instead, and Soraya didn't dare reach to make it lie smoothly again. Lisette wouldn't look Soraya in the face. "You must have things to do." "We," Soraya answered. "We are going to my sister's place before she sends the watch out. We're having a decent wash. We're getting breakfast. I'm starving." "Nuria's going to stick you with the baby. Or the books. She can cook her own books. I'm not here on the business of mortals." She couldn't make that stick, not with Lisette. "Or I'll do them while you find something to wear. Isha gives her new dress lengths every time she has a child. If he wanted to get out of this life cheap, he shouldn't have picked her." Lisette was sure of it. If Sira had been so nimble 10 years ago, she'd have been given to the bull dance. They'd sprinted through the nearest bathhouse inside 20 minutes, so she reached Nuria and Isharu's place with her tunic stuck to her skin and sand all over her oiled feet. Sira flew up the stairs to the family's rooms, as if Lisette would follow, and stopped on the second landing to shout when she didn't. "I left my bag here last night. Come and say hello, at least." Nuria was 2 or 3 years older than Sira, no more. Still beautiful, 15 years into a business marriage, and dressed as if 8 children were no matter. Whenever Lisette saw her, Nuria looked sweet-eyed and sleepy until it was too late. Now she turned a mood like fresh coals on Sira. "Out all night and late this morning. What if I had left the latch open for you?" "You never would." Sira kissed Nuria's hands and cheeks. "So I knew you were all quite safe." They were not very like each other in temper, but each sister could have been the other's undersketch, fair as milk, with bright brown eyes and black hair. Sira had a strong nose, and Nuria's was a snub. After so many children, Nuria stood with her weight settled into her hips, while Sira was always half forward, balanced almost on her toes. "Sit and have tea. A little while more won't matter once you've seen the fields. Painter," Nuria called, "see that Madhu doesn't throttle himself on the loom." She gestured indoors, and Lisette moved a step or two without thought, as though Sira's family had been the ones to hold her mother's debt, as if a well-dressed landlady had the power to command. Sira caught Lisette's hand, her voice light as thrush song, her eyes sharp and cold. "Oh no, I can't spare Lisette today. If I'm by myself, the elders will talk me to death." "She can't go with nothing to wear." Nuria said it as if there were princes out there, not sharp stones, drowsy wasps, and a belly full of dust. as if proper flounces and ribbons were what brought the crocuses in. Agreed. Seaver twisted one earring free, then the other, and held them in her sister's sight. Bees, with fluffy basalt shoulders and onyx stripes across their tiny gold bodies, gold wire wings almost thin enough for flight. I'll take 5 minutes in your wardrobe. They were not invited to breakfast with Nuria and her children. Iset didn't know what to do with the pile of wool and linen Sira chose. Striped petticoats, blue and white overskirts, a dress printed all over with papyrus blossoms in red and green. Every tying tape had a pattern woven through it, flowers or stars. Every pin was gilt or dipped in bright colors. It was more cloth than she'd ever possessed, and suddenly Iset knew how it was to be warm in the first of winter. There's a cape, but it isn't hemmed or finished yet. Sira patted her bag, bulkier now than a couple clay tablets and Stylie could make it. Tell me if you're cold and I'll try to find a pin. There must be 12 on me. All load-bearing unless you want to turn so many heads, Marit. She went on uphill laughing. Under her veil she'd braided and twisted her hair almost tamely down her back, and she hadn't left home so covered in gold and fine stones. But Iset thought Sira must be much the same, despite years. Springing toward the shoreline, off the cliff's edge to the next thing, without even sandals to slow her. She was beautiful. The ivory and earthen way Kefti women like to be painted, though her eyebrows would never lie neatly, and in paintings, ladies never had soft dark hair along their upper lip. She adored being gazed at, would dance rather than be still, loved to flirt by touch. Sira had every art of dress and gesture. She'd practiced them on Iset, younger, and surely other women since, even if the Lady of Owls was one of the chaste gods. Barley water or 12th part wine, I said. Sira balanced 2 clay cups in one hand, 2 skewers of grilled eel in the other, and tossed her head to keep eel sauce from her veil. Whichever you don't, Iset began, stumbling and got weak vinegar. And tell me what I owe. You lent me your bed. Now, I fed you. Nothing's owed. There wasn't a bed. Iset's ears went hot. And we weren't sleeping. We say polite things in the street, Iset like sunrise. Sira had done that almost from always. Put another name on Iset's own, the way other people's lovers might say dear. Some of them had made Iset's mother laugh into her hand, and some made her thoughtful and quiet. One day she'll curl her hair at the shoulders and say she's your husband. I don't mind that wild girl looking after you, Saiti. But who's looking after her? She talks to more gods than wise people do. I look after her, Iset said, for all the years until it wasn't true. Now, under cold clouds and a wind off the mountain, as the street became a pebbled path into the hills, Iset wondered what held true again, and what was lost. She was still weaving and unpicking when, beside her, Sira fell out of step. She put a hand on the nearest stone, then sat down in the dust with her veil over her face. The gauze was second-dye saffron, to lend gold to her pale skin, but now a flush like fever showed through the cloth. Sira, yeah. What's wrong? I forget if you've ever given me my whole name. The last bit's not a sound in Kemek, is it? The way you draw it out, it's pretty. I'll say it again sometime. Answer me? Iset knelt and touched Sira's throat and the nape of her neck, as if a fever or broken breathing might take hold in 10 minutes' walk. She found her skin only a little warm, and no one had ever been set tipsy on barley water. It's nothing. It's only I don't spend so much time under the sky, she said. The temple's just built like that. Covered up, built over. As if when they started they thought holy and secret were the same. Some of the oldest bits don't want anybody there. I'd swear the stones move to make us lose the way. Take a ball of flax with you. Pay it out as you go. You think that'd break the magic? Sira lifted her veil, as if to let Iset in. She looked sincere, and her cheeks were still clover blossom pink. What do I know of your people's magic? But you could follow it back the way you came. Sira laughed, the light young girl's laugh, that made Nerea and 100 others see her for a pretty little fool, until she hit back with the cold proof of numbers or both fists. When she reached for Iset, her hand was cold, but not shaking. Come back with me, Merit, and save us from ourselves. I'll think on it. Better now? I must be spoiled. Poor me, the light's too bright and the air's too... Sira sat up and fell back again on one elbow. I'd swear the air is wrong. I was fine in town. Will you give me your arm, or do you think it'll make people talk? It's my hand you're meant to ask for, if you want gossip. Iset only spoke to cover her concern, and it sounded silly and scared and brittle. All right, that too. Sira fell against her only a little on purpose. Are you not dizzy? I breathe pretty rocks and at least one bug that makes you see the gods. If I'm dizzy, it's too late. The hills looked like a wash day, linen spread over the most level places, 20 girls with baskets and their skirts tucked up at the waist. Everywhere small fires were burning, visible only by their smoke. The daylight was bright but bone white against the face of the mountain. There was ash in the wind. Even now, after some day's harvest, a purple veil should have rested over the curves and hollows of the mountain slope. The earth lay in long, bare striations as far up as Iset could see. There were patches of saffron flowers, but too few to call a crop. Grit blew along the rows where green plants should have been. The girls with their baskets jostled past, teasing the elders sent to mind them, laughing and leaping into a game of huntress and hounds. They were younger and a little older than Iset remembered. Young enough to ring dance around Iset and Sira and see old women. Old enough, settled enough in themselves, that the strain of their muscles, the sting under their nails counted as an offering. But there was almost nothing to offer. Sira, just ahead, pushed her traveling bag over her hip and knelt by one plant, alone. And Iset might have stretched to reach another. Sira brushed away ash like snow, pinched the flower from its stem, and shook it apart in her hand. She showed Iset the 3 red strands, for the girl, the bride, and the elder. Petals for the purple workers, pollen for the dyers, and what was green to die again. Sira breathed one low like a midwife come too late, and let purple, gold, and red fall to the ground. You try. Maybe the white ones are better. Iset felt too tall and twice too old. Her new skirts weren't meant for climbing, even kilted up by her knees, and the air seemed to waver when she looked ahead. Sheltered by a half-moon of piled stones, a shepherd's sleeping place long ago, was a cluster of saffron flowers, without cloaks of ash to dim their white. Iset's wrist, thumb, and first finger found the arc of remembered motion, the gentle gathering in and the pinch. The weight in her hand was too little, the petal's plush already gone. They look all right, poor things, but they're dry. The 3 red filaments crumbled, a bright clay-colored smudge across Isette's palm. Not dry, dried. Did a frost come? Come from where? The ground's hot. Isette kicked through a layer of pale, fragile pebbles. And there used to be a stream by the wall, here. I know it. I remember. I was here, said Isette, with my hands in the stream when you left. Mother wanted a shell full of the leavings to make yellows, and someone asked me, why are you here and not the harbor? Nefret had to tell me you'd gone to the owls. Gone to the owls. Sierra sat on the wall's crumbling edge, put her weight on her hands and lifted her face to the thin afternoon sun, as if she'd set down her basket for a minute's rest, and no years had passed at all. She'd take you too, you know. That wouldn't be... Say net, then. She doesn't care. The eldest of elders came from Larsa when she was a tiny girl, and she says Ishtar. The wine pours the same. Sierra took out a tablet and stylus, as if naming the Lady of Owls recalled her to her work, but only looked out at the smooth surface and rested the stylus's end against her teeth. Isette gave herself 3 breaths to trace and rough in that life. With strangers. With her. And let it go again. She sat in Sierra's shadow and let their shoulders touch. What will you tell them? That something's wrong. Little owls dipped and curved through the twilight overhead. There was enough wine to make the night warm, even cut for young girls and old women. Sierra had traded one of her long pins for honeycomb and a pomegranate. When she stretched out beside the fire, her head just resting on Isette's knee, her dress lay open almost to her hips. More than pomegranate or honey, Isette wanted chalk and charcoal. More than to sketch, Isette wanted to touch. You're allowed. Fast enough her bracelets rang together, she set Isette's hand just below her ribs. Sierra's breathing was firm, not even wine touched, and her bare skin cool as moonlight against Isette's palm. Her beaded, braided hair and her veil twisted together in Isette's lap. You're a priestess. Isette died 4 different ways, while people watched in the firelight. What's that to do with what's mine or yours? Sierra lifted a cupped palm of pomegranate arrows to Isette's lips. Rude to refuse them, a mess to accept. Isette's tongue brushed the hollow of Sierra's hand and made her tremble. And why should I lie? All these ladies know us. None waited for me to take a husband. Isette swallowed, the darkly sweet and the bitter too. What's the truth matter if you go back to your owls and I stay here? Maybe I won't go back. Maybe you won't stay here. Pomegranate juice shone on Sierra's mouth and fingertips. Along her wrist carnelian, garnet, and gold were alight. The Lady of the Mountain might have laid her head in Isette's lap, her veiled hair the net of the stars, her eyes dark and ancient as the bay. Isette, in all your names, we don't have to know everything tonight. It was her last night in town, maybe for years, and her sister's accounts were across Soraya's knees. The work wanted every lamp in Miriamun's workshop, Isette's workshop, and what stayed in the shadows wasn't much. A bedroll and a little household shrine. Renanut with no food to watch over, Bess and Tawaret cracked, and a doll that had been Nefret's, A patient gaze, a crimson mouth, and a tiny costume no one in town could have paid for in the proper size. Even Maria. I don't know how we made that, Soraya said. She could never, from years of the stylus and pen, manage such tiny stitches now. I forgot doing the fringe. Where did we get silk? Stole it off your sister's floor. Isette needed no lamplight to grind ochre. She was a neat arc of motion at the corner of Soraya's vision, reaching and returning like a wave in the bay. She ought to have had a doll that looked like her. They don't make... Isette flipped the grindstone and banked a small hill of reddish-brown pigment out of the way. We'd been free for half a minute. She was lucky to get it. Soraya tried to get from under last quarter's scroll, whether it tore a seam or not, but Isette had gone on working. She looked up at the scrabbling sound of reed paper, and what had been in her voice was not on her face. Anyone skimming from the woven goods trade? Payments to dark-eyed girls marked export tax? Oh, Isharu's boringly upright. He keeps my sister from swindling anyone too hard. Does get a bit off his port tax coming and going. He serves his hitch in the Navy when the king asks, and some of my wage comes over for your... She had grown too used to reading for the temple's weavers, talking balancing, talking with the other keepers of accounts. She stopped her mouth too late. The grindstone fell silent with one sharp scrape, and this time Isette sat back on her heels. Soraya shrugged. I make more than I need. I don't pay for a bite I eat or a thread I wear. I love Maria, but she's greedy, Marit. She'd take it from you if she could. She lowered my rent by 3 fleeces 2 years ago. Lowered it again this year, and you settled the bill for mother's rights. You shouldn't have to worry about anything. I don't want you to. I don't want you in debt to my kin, not for one room that lets the rain in off the street. All right. Isette was cutting quiet. Me and the gods and the neighbors know what you want. I would have wanted to know it was you. I would have thanked you somehow. I asked them to give you my love, every time. Not one for passing a message, your sister. Her eyes closed and her lips pressed thin. Soraya knew Isette was keeping something hurtful behind her teeth, really trying, shying away from a fight like the edge of a cliff. You couldn't sent you a little something, darling, and chuck it at a fisherman? You have nice writing. You might even have fit my name. Soraya breathed with care, to keep tears at bay, and she would not bring her veil over her face. She sat in Isette's one chair, lips parted dumbly as yesterday's fish, and searched too long for the words to unravel her mistake. She'd gone red, or white, in the lamplight. She could feel it, hot and cold, sick and awful. Isette was up from the earthen floor, and her anger was still sharp, but her worry was quicker. I'm sorry, she said it before Isette could. I didn't know if... I never asked if you could read. Can? Isette brushed her hands clean and took up one of the lamps. Well, I'm for work then. I lost today and yesterday. With you went unspoken, but the silent weight of it was between them. Work? Soraya reached for her. It's pitch dark. It's half tomorrow by now. The women's guilds want their new building, and your sister wants the credit for donating it. The plaster paintings come last. Isette, please. We don't have... Please let it wait. I insulted you, and I'm sorry, and you can take it out of me all the way to the harbor. I'm not insulted. She knew from Isette that no one's eyes were truly black, but 1,000 colors and 100 different lights. But Isette's were flat, flint dark in the shadowed room, as if they had no light to give back. Then they looked silver-lined, because Isette was trying very hard in front of her household gods and Soraya not to cry. I thought you kept quiet because you weren't allowed to, Isette bit at her lip, to be with anybody. Or it hurt you too much to think of us. Or you were just trying to bear it the way I tried. I am not insulted by someone who couldn't be bothered. She swept up her bundle of brushes and the roll that held her plaster knives and scrapers, and was out the door so fast it caught her heel. Soraya could still hear Isette cursing in pain in the street as she banked the tiny hearth and blew out the lamps. She lost her footing a little when the stones trembled beneath her. The Lady of the Mountain was sleepless. She thought the swaying might slow Isette too, at least enough to catch up while they were both stumbling. Then the ground creaked. A thing felt as well as heard, and under Soraya it rose and fell like a wave. Not now. She picked herself up, palms stinging, and closed her eyes against daybreak in the middle of the winter night. Mother of the Bay, Soraya thought, when the wind pushed her down again. Bastet who rises for Isette's sake, and then the sound struck her ears. Please don't kill us yet. She had to look, because to be blind while the mountain had driven her deaf was more than Soraya could bear. Her veil was full of ash and sand, and to the height of the houses everything was lost in a cloud of plaster. Soraya dared a few steps uphill. She tried a sharp stare to see above the dust, and then she would have called on every god she knew. All that came, helpless, small, and half-trapped in her throat, was a whimper. Fire spun into the wind like sea spray at the mountain's summit. Saffron red, seething white, and molten gold. Isette was dredged in plaster, bleeding here and sore there. One great gust had carried hot ashes downhill. There was so much work undone, so much paint shaken free, and so many cracks to fill in. Isette stood still and watched the colors up on the peak. Reds she'd never capture, a white at the edge of violet. She cried from dust, from tiredness, from having to begin again. But she'd been crying before the mountain woke. The ceiling was still falling onto the stairs, but Isette thought she heard footsteps below. Slow and struggling, but a human sound, not laugh and plaster breaking. Isette, if you're dead, I'll kill you, Marit. Please say. Sira, covered in scrapes and shrapnel stung, went deathly still in the doorway. Oh no. It was pure heartbreak, the echo of Isette's own heart, and Sira reached down for a fallen curve of plaster, as if she could set it right. Don't, my own. Nothing's to be done. Sira caught her by the waist, curled her hand at the nape of Isette's neck, and drew her in for a kiss. It wasn't like the 100 kisses of the past few days. Not fevered, not fierce, nor making up for lost time. It was, I'm here. I'm sorry. I love you. What are you... Why were you out in the... Isette stopped. She didn't need answers while Sira stood quietly bleeding. Clean rags and a pot of water were under her workbench to damp out mistakes. She soaked a bit of old linen and got to work. Sira kept still, without a flinch or a sound, while Isette unpinned her torn veil and wiped the dust from her face, blotted her forearms and the heels of her hands, and bent as long as she could bend without shaking, to press the wet cloth against Sierra's skinned knees. I had to see you. I had a question. Doesn't matter now. You'll stay here, I know, until all this... Isette shook her head. Couldn't say it. Couldn't not know it, either. You'd go with me? You'd try for a season or two? Sierra caught up Isette's hands and held tight, though it must have stung. Please, Isette. Live with me or don't. Talk to me or don't. Sierra. It was still not right, but Sierra's face lit with her trying. What if it doesn't matter? My leaving, our starting over. What if this is the world ending, and all we can do is wait for what comes? Then wait with me, even if we fight from sunrise to moonset. She put her head down on Isette's shoulder, as if she'd fall asleep amidst paint fragments and ruin. But I'd as soon do without the fighting, Marit.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Lesbian Historic Motif Podcast. See the show notes for links to people and topics. Most shows will have a transcript linked as well. If you have a book announcement, a topic suggestion, or might like to appear on the show, please drop me an email. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate it and subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and consider supporting our Patreon.